Hey, my lilies. Welcome back. Just a quick on air note before we dive in. The last couple episodes sounded a little, let's say, adventurous. We had some technical issues popping up behind the curtain, but the good news is we're back on track. Thank you for your patience and for sticking with me through the glitches. Everything should be running clear and clean from here on out. All right, let's get back into the episode. Hey, my lilies. Welcome back to another episode of Ink and Impact. Today, we're stepping into a holiday that most of us grew up on knowing as a time for laughter, family, good eating, and giving thanks. Every year we sit around tables filled with love and traditions passed down through generations. And for many of us, Thanksgiving has always been that celebration of warmth, memory, and gratitude. But just like any tradition, there's a story behind it, a deeper truth that often gets overlooked, forgotten, or softened over time. And today, we're going to talk about that. We're going to break down where the holiday comes from, what it has meant, and how we give meaning to things that we choose to celebrate. Because the power of tradition doesn't come from the date on the calendar. It comes from what we pour into it. And sometimes we have to pause and ask, do we really know the roots of what we're honoring? And are we shaping our future with intention, or just repeating what we've been taught? So, settle in, my lilies. This one is about truth, gratitude, and the weight of tradition. When we talk about Thanksgiving, most of us were taught the same story. Pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a peaceful meal, laughing together, building trust, celebrating a harvest. It's comforting, it's simple, and it's incomplete. The truth has weight. And before we talk about gratitude, we need to sit with what actually happened. The first Thanksgiving wasn't an actual celebration of unity. Here's what really happened behind the 1621 feast. The Wampanoag, I think that's how you say it, people were devastated before the Pilgrims arrived. Before the Mayflower ever touched the shore, the Wampanoag people had already survived something catastrophic, a mysterious infectious disease introduced by the earlier European contact swept through their villages from 1616 to 1619. It killed between half and almost 90% of their people. Entire communities were wiped out. The land the Pilgrims eventually settled on, it belonged to the Patois, a Wampanoag band that had died almost completely from this epidemic. So when the Pilgrims came, they walked into a world already grieving, weakened, and forever changed. This wasn't a thriving nation welcoming guests. It was a nation trying to survive an unimaginable loss. Now, their help was a political move, not a friendly gesture. The Wampanoag didn't help the Pilgrims because of kindness or curiosity. They helped because their enemies, the Narragansett tribe, were stronger. Their numbers had been reduced drastically by disease. They needed allies, weapons, and leverage to protect their remaining people. The Pilgrims, although struggling, had guns and military discipline. So their leader, Master Watt, made a strategic alliance, not a friendship. This was survival, not celebration. Now, the famous feast was not a holiday or a tradition. The 1621 gathering was not planned as a Thanksgiving day, was not repeated annually, and was not a shared cultural tradition, and lastly, was not a symbol of unity at that time. Here's what actually happened. The Pilgrims were holding a harvest celebration because they had survived their first year. They had fired guns and cannons in the air as a show of military practice. Then the Wampanoag warriors heard the gunfire. They came running and armed, ready to defend or intervene if necessary. When they arrived and realized there was no threat, they stayed. They brought deer. They joined the meal. Now, but remember this. This feast never became a tradition until centuries later, retold and rewritten into something softer, cleaner, and easier to digest. Now, neither group saw this as a Thanksgiving. The Pilgrims did have religious Thanksgiving days, but these days of Thanksgiving was of fasting, prayer, repentance, not feasting. So the 1621 meal wasn't considered Thanksgiving at all, not by the Pilgrims, not by the Wampanoag. It only became the first Thanksgiving long after everyone involved had passed, long after the real story had already been rewritten. Now that we've peeled back the truth behind the 1621 feast, we need to talk about something even more uncomfortable. Something that rarely makes it into school books or holiday conversations. Because the first official Thanksgiving wasn't about gratitude. It wasn't about unity. It wasn't about family. It was about a massacre. In 1637, just 16 years after that misunderstood feast, the colonial governor of Massachusetts Bay declared a day of Thanksgiving, not for harvest, not for survival, but to celebrate the killing of the Pequot Nation. Now, here's what happened. The Pequot people were powerful, organized, and protective of their territory. As settlers pushed deeper into the indigenous lands, tensions rose, trade disputes escalated, and alliances formed on both sides. But everything changed on May 26, 1637, when the colonists and the native allies surrounded a Pequot village at Mystic, Connecticut. They set the village on fire while families were sleeping. Those who ran were shot or cut down. Over 700 Pequot men, women, elders, and babies were killed, most burned alive. Survivors were enslaved or sold to the Caribbean. When the troops returned, colonial leaders called for a day of Thanksgiving, a day to give thanks for victory, a day to celebrate near erasing of an entire nation. This is why indigenous groups say Thanksgiving is not our celebration, it was our mourning. The holiday grew as colonization spread. As European expansion continued, Thanksgiving became a tool, a ritual used to spiritually justify taking land, breaking treaties, and eliminating indigenous tribes. Let's break down the major pieces of this painful puzzle. Okay, the Pequot War, 1636 through 1638. This war didn't start with the massacre, it was the climax. Colonists wanted control over the fur trade. They wanted Pequot land. Friction turned into violence on both sides. By the end of the war, the Pequot Nation was declared extinct by colonial decree. Speaking the Pequot language was banned. Survivors were forced into slavery or absorbed into another tribe. The colonists held multiple days of Thanksgiving throughout the war whenever battles were into their favor. So the holiday wasn't a symbol of peace, it was a celebration of conquest. Now, King Philip's War, 1675 through 1678. This was one of the deadliest wars per capita in early American history. King Philip was Metacom, son of Massasoit, the same Massasoit who made the alliance with the Pilgrims. By the 1670s, colonists had taken more land, broken more treaties, and pressured tribes into converting into Christianity. Metacom resisted. War broke out. By the end, entire indigenous villages were burned. Thousands were killed. Survivors, including Metacom's wife and son, were sold into slavery. Metacom was executed and his head was displayed on a spike in Plymouth for 25 years. Colonists declared days of Thanksgiving after major victories throughout this war too. This holiday became a ritual of supremacy, a way to say God is on our side. Our expansion is divine. Now, ongoing land theft. Throughout the 1600s through 1800s, colonists and later the U.S. government forced tribes into unfair treaties, took millions of acres of land by force, broke agreements as soon as resources were found on native land, pushed tribes westward under the belief of manifest destiny, the idea that white settlers were meant to take the continent. Thanksgiving proclamations often followed these victories. Now, forced conversions in boarding schools. As the U.S. grew, so did efforts to erase indigenous culture. Christian missionaries entered native communities, demanding conversion. Children were taken from families and placed in government or church-run boarding schools. They were beaten for speaking their language. Their hair was cut, names changed, identities punished. This continued well into the 20th century. The motto of the schools, "Kill the Indian, save the man." Many of these policies were framed as civilizing missions, blessed again by national days of Thanksgiving. Now, systematic genocide. Indigenous populations plummeted due to warfare, disease, starvation, forced relocation, intentional destruction of resources like buffalo. By 1900, only about 250,000 indigenous people remained in the U.S., down from millions before colonization. Thanksgiving, as celebrated and romanticized, helped mask the reality of that devastation. Thanksgiving didn't grow from gratitude. It grew from expansion, from claiming land that wasn't theirs, from using God as a stamp of approval on violence. And understanding this doesn't take away from the gratitude we hold today, but it forces us to acknowledge what the holiday was built on and who paid the price for its creation. Now we uncovered the truth behind the early Thanksgivings, the violence, the war, the political strategy. We can move into how this holiday transformed into the family-centered tradition we celebrate today. Because the Thanksgiving you and I grew up with didn't just appear, it was crafted, designed, shaped on purpose. And the architect of that transformation was a woman named Josepha Hale. Josepha Hale was a powerful magazine editor in the 1800s. Think of her as the media influencer of her time. She controlled one of the most widely read women's magazines in America. And from her desk, she started a mission. She believed America needed a unifying tradition. Women needed a stronger role in shaping the home. Family values needed a spotlight. And the nation needed a holiday rooted in warmth. So she took the fractured, violent truth of the Thanksgiving and rewrote it. The narrative she pushed. in her magazines she published was about stories, poems, essays, historical accounts that painted Thanksgiving as a peaceful, beautiful moment in American history. She emphasized unity, family, gratitude, tradition, harmony between natives and settlers. She created the story of pilgrims and the Indians sharing a friendly meal, even though that version was heavily simplified and scrubbed clean of the violence that came after. Now, a softer mythology of it. Hale wasn't malicious, but she was intentional. She removed the massacres, the land theft, the wars, the trauma, and replaced them with good food, family gatherings, homemaking rituals, seasoned recipes, and a picture perfect origin story. Her version is the one many of us learned in school. Her version is the one that became the foundation of American tradition. Her version is the one that made Thanksgiving wholesome. And she campaigned for 17 years, writing letters to politicians and presidents until one finally answered, Abraham Lincoln, and the Civil War of 1863. Now, when President Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday in 1863, it had nothing to do with pilgrims. The country was in the middle of the Civil War, the bloodiest conflict in American history. Families were divided, states were broken, hope was fragile. Lincoln needed unity, morale, something to remind Americans of shared identity. Sarah Josephine Hale's idea gave him a solution. So, Lincoln declared a national day of Thanksgiving, not as a historical tradition, but as a strategic act of national healing. Now, Lincoln used the holiday to unify the country and kind of lift spirits, remind citizens to be thankful despite suffering, and to create a moment of emotional connection. It was political, it was symbolic, it was necessary, but it shifted Thanksgiving away from its dark truth and into a more patriotic narrative. Now, the commercialization of Thanksgiving. Once the holiday was recognized nationally, America did what America always does. It marketed it, packaged it, sold it. By the early 1900s, Thanksgiving became a commercial phenomenon. Parades. Cities began organizing Thanksgiving parades, eventually leading to the iconic one sponsored by a major department store. The goal? To kick off the shopping season and draw people into the stores. Food companies. Brands like canned goods and turkey suppliers and dessert companies used the holiday to drive sales. Recipes were published in newspapers and magazines linking their products to traditional Thanksgiving meals. Department stores. They created window displays, decorations, and eventually Black Friday, a shopping frenzy positioned directly after the holiday. Holiday and media, Hollywood and media, like film TV specials and children books portrayed Thanksgiving as a cozy, living, and nostalgic, peaceful thing. These images slowly replaced the real history in the American imagination. Thanksgiving became less about truth and more about comfort. So, when we look at Thanksgiving today, the warmth, the food, the family time, we're looking at the holiday that passed through many hands, born out of survival, twisted through violence, reshaped by media, reclaimed by politics, and polished by corporations. The painful origins just didn't disappear, they were simply covered with a prettier story. Understanding that gives us power. The power to honor the truth while still redefining what this day means for us. We've talked about the history. We've talked about the truth. Now we step into the deeper question. What does celebration really mean? And why do we cling so tightly to the traditions that we inherit? Tradition is powerful because it carries memory, it carries repetition, it carries identity. People don't just celebrate what happened, they celebrate what they believe what happened, or what they've been told to believe. Celebration becomes emotional. It becomes part of family rhythm. Year after year, it becomes a ritual of comfort, even if the truth underneath it is complicated. But here's the thing. We are the ones who give traditions their power, not history, not textbooks, not the calendar. Us. We choose how we hold a tradition. We choose how we redefine it. And we choose whether we let nostalgia guide us or truth ground us. Thanksgiving is a perfect example of this. Most of us grew up with love, food, family, familiar smells, and laughter, gratitude. And those things are real. They matter. They have weight. But the holiday itself, the myth, the sanitized story, the romanticized history, that was chosen for us. Now, as adults, we get to choose differently. We get to make Thanksgiving not about the lie, but about the lesson. We can elevate gratitude while acknowledging grief. We can celebrate resilience while honoring those who were harmed. We can teach our children the truth while still creating a table full of love. Celebration isn't about pretending. Celebration is about intention. Traditions don't stay alive because they're historically accurate. They stay alive because we continue to practice them. But every tradition has two layers: what actually happened and what we choose to make of it. And the moment we understand that, we realize something important. We have the authority to reshape the meaning, to reclaim it, to tell the truth about it. Traditions are like seeds. Whatever intention you plant in them grows. So if we plant truth, gratitude, awareness, inclusion, healing, and remembrance, then future generations will inherit a Thanksgiving rooted in something real, not manufactured. For centuries, this holiday was used to erase truth, but now it can be used to restore it. This is where your voice, your awareness, your heart, and your spirit come in. This is where celebration becomes not just a moment, but a message. When we look at traditions, we have to look at them the way Sarah looks at hers: intentional. She reshaped her traditions to erase the heaviness, the unhappiness, the uncomfortable feelings that certain seasons brought. She created a story, a table, a moment that brought her friends together and restored unity. And Abraham Lincoln did something similar in 1863. The Civil War, the division, the pain, none of it had anything to do with the Pilgrims. Like we already talked about, it had everything to do with healing a nation. His declaration wasn't built on folklore. It was built on the need to acknowledge pain and give people a reason to breathe again. Because the truth is this: every tradition is created by someone who is trying to rewrite a memory, someone who is trying to soften the pain of something that shouldn't have happened or didn't have to happen. Traditions become a way to hold space for someone else's story, someone else's hurt, someone else's endurance, someone's truth. And when you carry that tradition forward, you become the keeper of it. You become the one who holds the responsibility of remembering why it began. It's the same with stories and testimonies. When a person shares an experience with you, you honor them by remembering it accurately, speaking it with intention, and carrying it with care. So as we move through history and into our future, I want everyone to understand this clearly. Thanksgiving is not about the Pilgrims. It never was. The events that people attach to it today are not the heart of what this time truly means. Thanksgiving is about giving thanks, literally. It was meant to honor the fallen, acknowledge unspoken pain, and push us toward unity. The holiday is a reminder to be grateful, not because everything is perfect, but because some people didn't get the chance to be here with us to be thankful at all. So if you're someone who loves the food, the family, the laughter, the gathering, then yes, Thanksgiving should be absolutely be one for like the books, like for you. But when you sit down at the table, remember this: give thanks for those who came before you. Give thanks for those who will come after you. And give thanks for the moment you are in right now.